And we are back with our fourth session for this block. I can't believe we're already here. The time seems to fly so quickly. But before I leap into introducing our speakers, again, just a little bit of that housekeeping. A reminder that all of these sessions will be recorded and they will be available on SPP's website, which is spp.earth. So if you do want to come and re-watch them or share them with peers, you're absolutely welcome to do that. Of course, once more, our speakers will be very happy to take your questions at the end of this session. So please do leave your questions in the Q&A. And if you could do us a big favor, let us know specifically who your question is for, just so that we make sure that we ask it to the right person. But on that note, let's get ready to go. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome both Arti Kapoor and Robert Yang onto the stage today. Arti Kapoor is the AimProgress APAC Hub representative, as well as being the executive director of Embod, and she's going to be sharing a lot of the work that she does a little bit later on in the session. And we're also joined by Robert Yang, who is the chairman of Together for Sustainability Asia Pacific. And alongside that, he's also the procurement director for Asia Goods and Services Procurement at Arkema. And so, Robert, very excited to welcome you up today and to hand over to you for your presentation.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Robert. And nice to, although I cannot see you, nice to join this web and activities. And I'm the procurement director for North Asia for Arkema. I'm not sure whether you know Arkema. Arkema is a French company specialized in specialty chemicals. And I'm also, actually being the TFS China president since for almost 2.5 years. So another 2 years to go. So that's all for my self-introduction. Next slide, please. So why we have to do this sustainability job in chemical companies? If you look into the reality, actually China has, produced a lot of emissions, both for energies and also from, dangerous chemicals. And, actually all our stakeholders, investors, they're asking more transparency and due diligence process of our supply chain. And also China specific, actual chemical industry stands for 16% of our energy consumption and 18% of our greenhouse gas emission. So that's lots for China as well. So according to latest Chinese, development plan, and also with China's 36 ambitions, shows China, government, they are serious on this. And also starting from 2021, all listed companies in China, they requested to issue the ESG report on time, on yearly basis. Next slide, please. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, okay? So how TFS going to do? TFS starts with, 2011, with 6 membership companies CPO. They are BASF, Evonik, Henkel, Bayer, Lanxess, Solvay. These 6 CPOs, they are sitting together to see how to build up a sustainable chemical supply chain. So if I don't repeat all these bubbles, you will see that all about how to secure the supply chain, how to make risk management, how to gain organization benefit and commercial ones. And last not least, how to attract talent for our chemical industry. Okay, next slide, please. So these 6 company CPO, they said, okay, normally in daily practice, procurement professionals, sourcing professionals, they are good at, negotiation price. They are, actually tracking the delivery of suppliers. They are, actually more focused on quality of the supply. So this is our traditional work. But more than 12 years ago, these gentlemen already think about sustainability. They said, okay, we not only think about all this traditional job of procurement, we should also think about sustainability, how to create a sustainable supply chain with good transparency, with all stakeholders on the value chain. Next slide, please. So far, year to date, we have 43 membership companies. You see that, actually all the global spend of 400 billion euros. And among them, you will see a lot of famous, brand or companies. I don't repeat them. In China, there's 2 membership companies joined. In Wanhua joined 2019. It's a local Chinese company. And Senesis, who is the second one, joined last year. Okay, next one, please. So what's the TFS approach? So there's 2 kind of, framework or tools to make this assessment of sustainability. So first is EcoVadis assessment. We call it TFS assessment. Actually, TFS choose EcoVadis as platform to assess the vendors or suppliers, actually sustainable performance online. Actually, this means, they request supplier to upload the documents according to EcoVadis methodology. Another one is, actually the audits. So TFS authorized 4 agents, including SGS, EIM, etc., Intertech, etc. They send qualified auditor and directly to the supplier's site or production unit or production site warehouse to make the TFS audit. So this is 2 approach. You see, this is why we put it like a circle. It's ongoing process and increased improvement process. So if you found that there's CAP, we call corrective action plan, is found in major findings, you have to redo it. So this is never-ending process. It's a focus on continuous improvement. Next slides, please. So besides the, actually today we are focused on more on China. So I spent some time on TFS. So besides the EcoVadis assessment, TFS assessment and audit, TFS make a great, actually activity regarding the PCF guidelines. So this is the first, actually, industry, standard in chemicals. So which, actually measuring the product footprint. Okay, next slide, please. So if you look into the challenge of PCF, with product footprint, we call the PCF. So you'll see that one side, we are under pressure to declare it in a, good manner. Second, actually, we are also need to respond for data accuracy. On the other side, the scope 3 is so, difficult. Current standard is not accurate enough. So we have a lot of, pressure from senior management, from stakeholders to ask us as the professionals in procurement, what we're going to do for the PCF declaration. Next slides, please. So TFS, starting from last September, TFS has launched, actually published the PCF guidelines. This is a global standard for calculating the PCF for chemical industry, all the chemical products. First, this is tailored to meet unique chemical, actually specifics. And also, this ensures the high quality carbon footprint data. And it complies with all the ISO 9000 and greenhouse gas protocol and all these international organizations. And also, actually it allows a comparison of PCFs. Last not least, TFS is developing a PCF sharing tool. This is under, construction. So once tool is ready, it will be open to all the industry, so supplier can declare the PCF on this tool. So it creates really a transparency on this specific. Last not least, this focus on scope 3. So to be accurate. Okay. Next, please. So as I mentioned in last slides, we have a lot of build on collaboration with different organizations. You see that actually greenhouse gas protocol and SBI, SBTI, and World Business Council on sustainability development, and also World Economic Forum, etc. So all these organizations were very close talk, and we are partnered. So this ensures all the PCF guidelines issued by TFS can be accepted widely. And we are also in China, have very close contact and talk with CPCIF, with the China Petrochemical and Chemical Association. So all these make sure that all we are talking about same thing. You will see that a company alone cannot really change all the facts. So if we only act as a cross-company organization, a cross-industry organization, can we really push the change on this planet? Okay. So go talk about a little bit about governance. Next slide, please. So actually, since we're all professional procurement, so we know that we have to face antitrust rules. So actually on all our meetings, there are always law firm. There's always lawyer stand with us. We cannot discuss about anything about price, supplier name, etc. So, and also let's say all our annual report and activities will be accessed by the external law firm. So in this perspective, TFS is really well, governed. Next slide, please. And also, this is structure of global TFS. You see that we have, actually steer core, which is 6 CPOs, 1 president, a current president from Henkel. Mr. Bertrand is the Henkel of CPO of Henkel. He's the current president of TFS globally. And we have different work stream. Work stream 1 focus of governance and partnership with external associations, and 2 or 3 focus assessment audit, 4 focus on capability building within, or within the TFS organization or external with suppliers, and also communications. And workstream 5 is newly established, starting from the year before last, this greenhouse gas emission scope 3 topics. Okay, next slide, please. Besides in China, you will see I'm acting as a president in duty. So we have different work stream as well. So in China, we have 41 people with 23 different companies in TFS join this exciting job together. So we are not alone. We are work with all the team together in the region. Next slide, please. So talk something about China. You see that we really did a lot of job in China, and that's why we already, from terms of deliverables, actually also in terms of develop local membership companies, we're also, in good shape. So you see that from left side, you will see we started in training in Evonik side, and actually 2019 we welcomed Wanhua joined the TFS, the first local Chinese chemical company joined TFS. And you will see that we have 2020, we have CPCIC in Ningbo. We also last year, we launched the first PCF training in 10th anniversary of CPCF in Ningbo. And also we make the training, actually last year again in Ningbo as well. So a lot of activities being done in China. So how we do it? Actually we have regional meetings with all the teams on, let's say, monthly basis and quarterly basis, and also we have a specific project team which target on specific tasks of work streams, and then actually work like volunteer-based team, but well structured, well managed by ourselves, and push project moving forward together. Next slide, please. So, talking about challenges and opportunities. So you will see left side, you will see the challenge. China's suppliers, assessment results really far behind our expectations. You see, in China, we're talking about, actually, if EcoVadis assessment below 45, we have less than 30%, almost 70%. 70% of suppliers, their score is less than 45. If you compare with America and Europe for sure is the most advanced one, more than 84%. It's a long way to go. So that's why this is a continuous process. For us in Akima, for a lot of members, actually it's also a global standard as well in a lot of TFS membership companies. If EcoVadis assessment, TFS assessment score is less than 45, then suppliers is required to redo the assessment in 12 months. And if their score is larger or higher than 45, then normally they got something in 3 years' time. They don't need to redo it. In this way, we really push supplier to do the improvement based on findings in assessment or audit. And on the other side, the opportunities. So you will see that this is actually best practice sharing with you. So what we did in Akima, we identify those good suppliers or contractors. Their score is quite good. For us, for Akima, we said, okay, if the Akovati assessment is higher than 45, or the on-site audit is higher than 80. So I personally invite our team together with supplier CEO. We sit down together for business review. We tell them why Akima regard this sustainability issue so seriously. We introduce how company grows, and also we ask supplier to make a self-introduction. On the other side, at the end of this talk, we will present them. You will see that we print out a prize and we award them, and so that they are really engaged in this TFS activities. This has been actually quite for a long time, almost 2 years already. So actually, the feedback from suppliers is quite positive. And on the other side, some suppliers tell me the truth that due to this assessment, due to this award, they have got additional business opportunity for other companies when they see that, oh, you did so good job, excellent job in sustainability, award rewarded by Akima, and also there's a TFS certificate. Okay, they say, okay, no need worry about this area. So they need only care about the commercial side. Then they got additional business. So I think when I hear this news, when I have to talk with supplier, with their CEO, they said, okay, they are so happy with TFS to join TFS. They said, okay, next time, since they already higher than 45, they said, okay, next time we will for sure make improvement on our score. This is really something make me happy and make all the team happy. This that they are really buying this process. Next slides, please. So I think still within the time frame. So key takeaways for all the friends here. I think you need to integrate the sustainability assessment into your due diligence process of vendors. So this is for sure, because you have to think about long term. On the other side, to changing the mindset, people's mindset, you need to work jointly with him, with all the peers like TFS organization. Otherwise, the company alone is hard to change the whole industry. On the other side, the training is key to increase awareness, both internally, stakeholders, and also externally with suppliers, with associations. When you talk with suppliers on this, when you want to push their sustainable performance, especially in China, so you need to talk to their CEO. This is what I learned, or also our team's experience is talk to senior executive, it's better CEO level. At least you can really push things to happen. For your own procurement team, in order for them to really push the activity, you need set KPIs in a performance indicator. And also, you need to reward your good suppliers and also make recognition for good talent in sustainability. Because sustainability itself, it's very hard for you to how much savings are generated from these sustainability activities. It's very hard. So, but on the other side, it's so important for us. So I think you need reward talent as well. Last but not least, you need to be patient. You need this is daily job. It's not just today you do it and tomorrow you forget about it. Every day you think about it and you do it on a daily basis. And also as a CPO, head of procurement, I encourage you to invest yourself, invest your resources to these activities. If you look in the picture in the right, I think over when what I want to tell you, I think I'm glad to join TFS, and this is not a lonely journey because I'm so exciting working with so many exciting, excellent people together. You will see a lot of beauties, for sure, a lot of hardship. The question for you, all my friends, are you ready for that? Okay, that's all from my side.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Robert. I'm going to invite Arti now to join us and share her presentation so that we can hear from her.
Thank you. Just take a moment to share my presentation.
No problem.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Robert. That was a wonderful presentation. I learned a lot, and I would like to pick up from where you've left. So I've called my sharing context, culture, country, to bring attention to the need really for when we're engaging with suppliers to think about, where they are, their context and the culture and the country, of course. So that's really important. I thought that was a good focus. Now, I'm here representing AimProgress. So very similar to Together for Sustainability, TFS, AimProgress is a membership body of large MNCs. AimProgress is a forum of leading fast-moving consumer goods manufacturers and common suppliers assembled to enable and promote responsible sourcing practices and sustainable supply chains. AimProgress supports responsible sourcing through knowledge, collaborative initiatives, learning events, and innovative projects. Some of the members of AimProgress, you may know, include Unilever, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Barry Callebaut, Reckitt, Hershey's, Nestle, Mondelez, SC Johnson, Diageo, Procter & Gamble, and ADM, HH Global, Twinings, Westrock. I mean, the list goes on. So these are just some of the members. And our job, Embod, so I am the executive director of Embod. Embod facilitates the APAC hub, the Asia Pacific hub for AimProgress. Similar to TFS, AimProgress has a number of working groups across geographies such as Asia Pacific, as well as one for Africa. And there are also working groups that work on particular issues, such as living, income and wage, responsible recruitment, grievance mechanisms. And these are where members come together and volunteer to have working groups that work on these issues. Embod has been commissioned to facilitate the APAC hub, and we're also have been commissioned by AimProgress to implement a number of collaborative projects focusing on supplier engagement in APAC, which I will be speaking from. So just a little bit about Embod. We are an Asia-based agency with registered offices in Hong Kong and Thailand. We have expertise focused on business and human rights and social sustainability, and we focus in particular on labor issues and social protection. Our team is based across the world. We have a core team, mainly based in Asia, and we have project-based consultants across the world. We work on particularly risk assessments, research, analyzing context to understand issues around sustainability, particularly on human rights and labor. And then we form recommendations and action plans for our clients. And then we're able to also deliver training, capacity building, and engagement with suppliers. So these are just a little bit of the thing, some of the things that we do, so that you know. So what are some of the challenges that we're facing when we're looking at industry collaboration in APAC across companies, particularly for sustainability? As Robert was also alluding to, over the last 10 or 15 years, there's been an increase in awareness for better sustainability, hence the day, the World Sustainable Procurement Day. And so as we've seen this increasing awareness, we're also seeing a lot of regulations, particularly on a kind of due diligence approach. And as we know, the pressure is on more across the supply chains and partners and businesses across supply chains across the world. It's really important to kind of step back and think about where the perspective of sustainability, human rights standards, for example, including environmental standards, are coming from. A lot of the perspectives are coming from the global north. And as Robert was alluding to, this is why you see a lot of European companies, North American companies being, very kind of compliant, whereas Asian businesses are being seen as not as compliant. So, for example, so what does that mean? What if we stepped back and looked at how the whole idea of sustainability is being conceptualized and how this also contributes to the challenges we have when we're working in contexts, particularly around Asia, for example. So from this perspective, what companies are seeing in supply chains are increasing requirements. They're seeing an increase in human rights due diligence requirements. So a lot of businesses, particularly in APAC, are finding that they're undertaking increased work in ensuring that certain standards are being complied with. Across the world, you're finding that the largest multinational companies are now requiring thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of suppliers to accord with these requirements. And it does include risk assessments, and human rights due diligence includes a risk assessment, responding to risks, mitigating risks, and of course, remediating risks. So where do most of these multinational companies, how do you do this? And the main way has been through audits, which we see multiple audits being carried out. For a small or a medium-sized enterprise, let's say based in India, Thailand, Malaysia, China, what they're finding is increased audits. Sometimes some of our larger clients who are suppliers will say that they have a special team that supports auditors coming in almost once a week across lots of different standards. So you can imagine from the perspective of a small or medium-sized enterprise, based in Asia Pacific, this can be very disruptive to operations as well as very costly to carry out. So how are businesses supporting their supply chain partners in carrying out all of these audits to make sure they are complying with requirements? The other challenge we are seeing is that a lot of the standards are being reached through a compliance-driven approach. Of course, even the terminology, due diligence, gives the idea that certain requirements need to be checked and the criteria is set and all companies need to reach these standards. So even the idea of having audits, undertaking due diligence is focused on a compliance-driven approach. Now, the idea is to improve, let's say, sustainability standards. The idea is to improve human rights standards. The approach is compliance-driven. However, sometimes a strict compliance-driven approach might actually detract attention from other more effective, more impactful ways of ensuring human rights protections. Now, I'm speaking, for example, from the point of view of the workers or the rights holders. What is the best way to ensure that those rights holders or those workers are protected? And sometimes the checkbox approach doesn't always result in the protection you might be seeking for your supply chain partners. So it's important to take a compliance approach and also to understand its limitations. Some of the examples that we've seen, for example, in supply chains is where indicators are used to undertake an assessment, let's say, on forced labor. Now, if you're going into a small or medium-sized enterprise in your supply chain and telling them that you'd like to do a forced labor assessment using ILO forced labor indicators, this can be quite jarring and quite jarring for some of the businesses. It's more about ensuring improved labor standards, which is probably a better way of putting something. So this is something that's quite kind of important. That's just one example, and I can give a few others. Of course, taking a preset criteria that is often designed, in one part of the world, and then kind of bringing it to another part of the world without understanding the context of that country can sometimes seem like some of the issues are intransigent. Some of these might be, for example, around informal labor, around recruitment fees for migrant workers. Now, often a lot of businesses will find that certain issues with supply chains are intransigent and difficult to solve, particularly in the short term, and that it's difficult to achieve these standards, this criteria. And the assumption is often that it's related to a lack of technical capability, which is why a lot of supplier engagement focuses on training. Sometimes this is needed, training is needed, but sometimes the issues are based in the context. It could be a legal, contextual situation in the country, or cultural, or socio-economic. And these kinds of issues are much bigger than the individual companies which are required to improve their standards. So it's really important to understand where the challenge lies. So for example, other challenges might be around ensuring there is no child labor in household situations where you have smallholder farmers. Other issues may be in farms which are medium or large sized and use a lot of informal labor. But the the law of that country doesn't include informal labor in farms and fields in their labor laws. So imposing certain standards can take time when they're not grounded in the legal context of a country. So there's also sometimes communication challenges that we also hear from some of the suppliers. They might feel that the communication is one way, particularly when the main approach is an audit approach. Buyers will come in, customers will come in and say, here are our requirements, you need to comply. And so there's not a lot of chance for suppliers to kind of feedback. Often they feel that the standards are international standards without sufficiently including their perspectives. One example I can give to you is, for example, a couple of countries in the world, the UK and Australia have passed a Modern Slavery Act, which requires the largest businesses of those countries to ensure there is no modern slavery in their supply chains. And one of the risk factors that some companies identify is when the country of the supplier doesn't have a Modern Slavery Act. Now, this is a kind of very limited way of thinking about modern slavery. Really, what we're talking about is labor exploitation. And just because a country doesn't have a Modern Slavery Act, which is kind of very British and an Australian way of thinking of forced labor, it's a kind of Anglo-Saxon perspective on how labor exploitation is looked at. And so when you're going to other countries in Asia and saying, oh, well, you don't understand modern slavery, it's kind of coming at it from a very different point of view. Countries in Asia have many countries have very good labor standards, and they well recognize forced labor, criminalize forced labor and labor exploitation. So it's about understanding how internationally agreed standards are applicable in different countries in different ways and what the languaging is around that. So it's important to listen to suppliers to enable better insights into how they can better sustain and support sustainable practices in supply chains. But of course, it's not all just challenges. We're living in a dynamic world and we're on an important learning journey. And what's really exciting right now is that there are a lot of changes afield. And things are moving and progressing. So what are some of the practical solutions that we are supporting and finding in collaboration for sustainability within supply chains? So one of the things is when we're engaging supply chain businesses, let's really engage them in a number of ways. Training, guidance tools are very welcome. They are a beginning first step. And then what happens, beyond that? What we're finding is that engagement is also about understanding, listening, consulting, collaborating, and incentivizing. Robert just mentioned before about how to reward your best suppliers. Engaging with the senior executives of the companies, I think is a wonderful and very apt recommendations. A lot of the time, small and medium-sized enterprises in supply chains are family-run businesses, and they may have very good practices, for example, but they may not be formally, written or in the form of SOPs. So it's about supporting them over time. And yes, things take time. It's really important to maintain trust and transparency. Very often when we speak to suppliers, they are a little bit, they're also resistant to being investigated. Even though the word is audit, the feeling is judgment and investigation into their operations. So it's important to say, to look at how businesses are being engaged with, and say, look, we're looking at this kind of approach. So how do you work on these issues, and not kind of go in there looking for bad things. And that's why it's important to encourage transparency on their side, trust that they can actually talk to you about things. Of course, this is very difficult when you have thousands of suppliers or hundreds of suppliers or many suppliers, in one particular commodity. But that relationship is essential. In helping you engage with suppliers in your supply chain and value chains, it's important to understand country contexts. Now, country context is very broad. With some countries like Indonesia and India, you have a huge country, very populous and diverse across different parts of the countries. So country context doesn't just mean the one big country, but also the particular local, provincial, state contexts as well. So this includes understanding the law, the regulatory frameworks. Now, in some countries, you've got very good regulatory frameworks and they are enforced. In other countries, they may have the best regulatory frameworks in the world, but they're not enforced. So this is also really important to remember. Cultural and political dynamics are also very important to understand. It doesn't mean you become an expert in that country, but within your companies, you will have that expertise. And of course, within a sector, whether it's palm oil, whether it's cocoa, whether it's chemicals, like Robert was alluding to, there are different sector-specific dynamics. And that sector also has its own history, whether it's garments. What is the history of the dynamic in the country? And so when we are looking to intervene and engage and collaborate with these companies, how are we being informed by that dynamic on the ground? So that's really important to remember. History, social, and especially the laws. The beginning point is always the laws, understanding what does the national legal context and the state context say about your partner in business. And where required, train your own teams. Start at home first. If you have a procurement team, what do they understand about local context? What do they understand about local laws? If you're being called to ensure that your suppliers are complying with, let's say, European legislation coming in, or the American forced labor regulations, or the UK or other kind of Australian Modern Slavery Acts, what do you know about? How about we train our own teams first about the local context? What are the laws in Thailand on forced labor? What are the laws in some of the source countries for migrant workers, even Nepal or Indonesia or India or Malaysia? What do they say? So let's train our own teams on what the local context and legal context say. Where are the crossovers? And absolutely do not make any assumptions when you're engaging, particularly when you don't understand legal context of the country where your suppliers are. That's essential, I would say. So engage your local team. A lot of the largest companies in the world have their procurement and sourcing teams based in Asia. I think some of you are most probably based in APAC. How well are your local APAC-based teams being utilized? Do they have seniority and authority in the company, and are they being supported in are you being supported in engaging with suppliers and understanding the local context? This is an untapped resource that we're seeing, for example, as we facilitate the APAC hub for AimProgress. And it's important to authorize, empower, and promote local teams in APAC across supply chains to not only engage with supply chain partners, but also to be included and participate in the international global discourse of what sustainability standards are and the approaches that are used for supply chain sustainability. That must include the APAC-based teams in those international meetings that might be taking place in London, Chicago, Berlin, all of these countries. They should include teams from your APAC departments and teams. So a little bit about the practical initiatives that Embod is taking part in. I'll just finish. I know that I'm going over time, Caitlin. So one of the initiatives that we're doing under AimProgress's umbrella, we've called the Ganapati Initiative. Ganapati is another name for Ganesh, the deity in the Hindu pantheon, who represents new beginnings and the removal of obstacles. And the reason is because the project is focused on responsible recruitment in supply chains, particularly of migrant workers and foreign workers. So as we know, this is a significant issue in supply chain, is to ensure that migrant workers working in supply chain businesses have improved standards. We're focusing our initiative on Malaysia and Thailand. These economies have a significant reliance on foreign labor. And our initiative is focusing on capability building. We're moving away from only training suppliers to actually moving into this idea of how do we build their capability, not just on technical standards, but more adaptive and organizational. And the approach we're taking is a very collaborative one. So what we're doing is we're going in, we're talking to supply chain actors of the working group of AimProgress. So AimProgress has a working group supporting and commissioning this project. So they have put funding into a joint pot under AimProgress, which is supporting Embod in implementing this collaborative approach to capability building in supply chains. So what we're doing is we've done, the first step is to undertake a needs assessment where we work with supply chain partners and understand what they want in order to improve their operational business. So the idea essentially is that AimProgress, through its membership, is supporting Embod as a third-party independent technical consultancy to offer business consultancy to supply chain partners. And so we tailor the capability building business consultancy to supply chain businesses across manufacturing and plantations, as well as to recruitment agencies and labor providers in Asia Pacific. So what we've done is we've taken this pot of funding. We have a one-year project. We've designed the Ganapati Initiative. The first step is that we consult. We engage with supply chain partners. These are mostly small and medium-sized enterprises in Thailand and Malaysia. We promote the idea of the initiative, and they self-select to come on board and say, we want to be part of this Ganapati Initiative, where we get no-cost business consultancy to improve our sustainability standards and practices. Once they come on board, we undertake a rapid assessment. The business actually identifies what their needs are, both in terms of their internal training, their policies, their team makeup, and everything. So it's like they're getting direct, they are getting direct business consulting. Then they come up with a collaboratively agreed action plan. This could be coaching, it could be undertaking surveys for them of their own workers for their own purposes. Once they come up with the action plan, we actually offer that consulting at no cost. When we undertake this consulting with these businesses, very importantly, we offer this consulting in a completely direct and confidential way. even though Embod, for example, in this example, is being commissioned by AimProgress and the working group members, we are independently working with the supply chain actor to offer them the consulting that they need. The idea is after a year, once they then have to do those assessments, such as EcoVadis or the other assessments under auditing standards and AimProgress, they will be better able to show and showcase their better standards in those audits. But our job is to improve their capacity, but in a much broader way. So I hope that little cap was okay and understood, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arti. That was really informative and so interesting. We have a couple of questions from the audience, if yourself and Robert wouldn't mind answering them. Arti, I'm going to start with you with a question that we have from Alan, because I think that what you are doing as part of Embod is actually something so complementary, that he's saying that we need to encourage suppliers to be able to engage as groups or industry associations to reduce the costs. We often disregard economic sustainability, so remembering the triple bottom line. What are your thoughts on helping suppliers in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think collaboration across suppliers is really important. It's important to also understand the context that they're in. So if suppliers can come together within a particular country, they're able to come up with a set of standards and a set of practices which they may all agree to. It's also important to support, to I guess, advocate to the governments of these countries. Now, for example, if we're talking about Malaysia and palm oil, not all palm oil businesses in Malaysia are part of RSPO, which is, the international certification. But the government of Malaysia has in the last few years brought in MSPO standards. And all businesses, all palm oil businesses across Malaysia have to be a part of, have to be compliant with MSPO standards. So this is a way in which suppliers can come together and have some common standards, which then work towards the kinds of standards that buyers and customers want to have. I think it's a great idea, as Alan is saying, for suppliers to come together. And I think that can be better encouraged as long as they are supported from where they are. Very often, the kinds of standards that are sometimes being required are sometimes too far and being needed too quickly. I think it's important to start where suppliers are. I think that's the key.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges we have at the moment is that nobody quite knows where to get started. And so this looks like a program that certainly helps everybody on that journey. Robert, a question for you. What was the major motivation for you wanting to join TFS?
That's a very good question. Actually, I start with internal KPI from my boss. So when I work for Axo before I joined Akima, so our boss is, okay, we join TFS. There's a KPI, you need to do that. Then when I joined TFS, working with different work streams with peers, I feel the passion. I feel they are so dedicated themselves to the job. Then I realized that this is a unique chance for me to change the environment, actually with our suppliers. In China, let's say 5 or 6 years ago, I remember in winter, there are a lot of foggy days, a lot of pollution actually 5 or 6 years ago. So I think, I need to do something. And TFS seems the only way, possibility I can use my professionalism to push our suppliers on supply chain to make the change. So I think I'm glad to see that in recent years, I see more and more blue skies in China. And I so believe that this is a wonderful journey. I still want to be part of it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We have time for one last question, and I see one has got a little bit of popularity. Arti, one for you. It's from Abhishek. How do you investigate labor discrepancies in farms? And also, if you identify any, how do you mitigate those?
Okay, that's a very big question. So I'll try to keep it very brief. So when we're talking about farms, there's so many different types of farms, right? We've got smallholder farms, medium-sized farms, large. And then, of course, we've got estates and plantations when we're talking about tea or when we're talking about palm oil. And investigating labor discrepancies is about looking at the risks. Our approach would be to go into a certain context, understand the kinds of people that are on the farms, where they live, and where what kind of labor is required, and how is the labor organized. Is it informal labor? Is it formal labor? Is it household labor? For example, if we're looking at medium to large-sized farms in India, we see there is a lot of informal labor being used, and that informal labor doesn't fit within the labor standards or the labor laws of India. So that is a risk. And so how is that organized? How is that, what is the status of, let's say, if it's largely women that are undertaking that informal labor? So we look at the risk factors around that. How much are they getting paid? Is it more than the kind of equivalent of minimum wage in that state of India? If we're looking at West Africa and cocoa, we're talking about smallholder farms. The children in those farms are the children of the family. They're working in those farms maybe after school or instead of school if it's harvest time. So the risk the labor discrepancy, the risk is, do these children have access to school? Are they able to go to school? Are they being supported to go to school? So these are some of the ways of identifying risks around labor discrepancies. If we're talking about informal labor, if we're talking about household child labor, or if we're talking about migrant labor, if we're talking about plantations in Malaysia, we're talking about migrant labor. So how is that being organized? How is that being, how is the company being organized? There's more opportunity with plantations because we're talking about companies for there to be systems which we can work with. So there's a lot of questions before that, but we're going from informal to formal, and then we're looking at reducing risks over time. And happy to elaborate on that in some other ways, but that's just part of how we might identify risk.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's a very comprehensive answer for something that you had to do so quickly. So I thank you very much. Robert, Artie, thank you so much for this session. I found it extremely informative and really, really helpful in terms of making sense of what is an incredibly complicated and nuanced issue. So once more, we're going to be changing tack for our next session. I will be joined by Darian McBain and again by Bertrand Concary. We're going to be talking about the blue revolution. So really talking about the ocean economy and what we need to be thinking about in terms of ensuring its long-term sustainability. We will be back with that session in 7 minutes. And I see Artie has just shared her email address with all of you if you have any further questions. Also, if you do want to continue the discussion, please do feel free to head over to our lounge, grab a seat over there, and continue to talk with our peers. So thank you so much, Robert and Artie, and I will see you all again in a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.